Beth Hessel, the Executive Director of the Athenaeum of Philadelphia. We also have Tess Galen, our events coordinator, who helps make sure that all of our events run smoothly and you are able to have a wonderful learning experience. I will introduce our guest in just a moment, but we're so glad that you are here. The Athenaeum is a learning community that takes advantage of our circulating library, our special collections library and research center, our amazing space, and our wonderful programs to grow and learn together about the arts and literature, history, all things Philadelphia and our built environment. And we are so glad that you have joined us. If you are new to the Athenaeum but enjoy today's program and want to learn more, I encourage you to go online to see more about our programs and how to become a member. We are reopening from our renovations the week of November 7th, so I hope you will join us and come in person to be a part of all that we do. This afternoon, we are delighted to have as part of our lunchtimes with the Athenaeum, Susan Gibbs. She is the president and co-founder of the SS United States Conservancy and the granddaughter of William Francis Gibbs, who was the SS United States designer and directed plans for more than 60% of the nation's wartime fleet during World War II. The Conservancy leads the global effort to save and repurpose America's flagship, the SS United States, which so many of you have these experiences with. So we'd like to welcome you today, Susan, and invite all of you to join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to Susan Gibbs. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I will hope the menagerie in this setting that I am in my home will my cockatiel in the background and my cat may make an appearance. But all of that aside, it's just such a thrill to be here. And yeah, I'll just get started. The story of the SS United States really is a Philadelphia story. My grandfather, the ship's designer, grew up in Philadelphia, and here he is with one of his, I guess, pets run in the family. So here he is with one of his dogs. But then very early on, when he was 8 years old in 1894, the largest and most impressive American ship at that time was launched at Cramp Yard on the Delaware River. And so William Francis Gibbs, back when he was Willie, as an 8-year-old, viewed this and was just blown away. And later, in subsequent speeches, said that was the moment when he was 8 years old, saw this ship launch, dedicated his life to ships, and he never regretted it. And so from that moment, he became, a total ship nerd. And here, we don't worry about reading this whole thing in his rudimentary handwriting as a child, but he's basically trying to encourage one of his sisters to purchase an engine part on a trip to New York. So he was a lackluster student, to say the least. But he was obsessed with ships and making model engines, reading engineering journals. He did go to the Delancey School in Philadelphia. And yes, it was the St. Louis that was launched in response to the chat. So here he is with some of his fellow students at the Delancey School. Again, lackluster academic performance, went on to Harvard, even, notwithstanding his high school level academics. And you, again, don't worry about seeing this in depth, but you may notice that there are E grades. And I can assure you that E's do not stand for excellent. In fact, the other end of the scale, and there are a few comments in some of the classes in which basically it was written no book. So not a Harvard standout by any stretch, and in fact didn't even graduate. But nonetheless, and you can see his picture, where is it? Right on the top right column, it basically simply says all the others have these elaborate clubs and activities in the mandolin club, and his is simply in college 3 years. But not to jump ahead, but nonetheless, as we can see, subsequent issue of the Harvard Alumni Bulletin has him on the cover after earning an honorary degree in 1947, along with J. Robert Oppenheimer, Omar Bradley, George Marshall, etc. So after Harvard, he went on to Columbia, and these books are currently in my home, and I can assure you they have really not been opened, probably ever. But nonetheless, he did graduated from Columbia Law School, And of course, while he was in law school, the Titanic set forth on its ill-fated maiden voyage, and I can assure you that that was of much more preoccupation to my grandfather than his legal studies. So we all know what happened to the Titanic, and I know that my grandfather, even back then, was meticulously studying the arrangements, why exactly, what happened to the Titanic, and he knew that it could stay afloat with 4 compartments flooded, but 6 were breached, and they're records of his continued obsession with vessel design and safety. So right a few years after the Titanic debacle, well, he did practice law for a single miserable year, and then moved to his parents' home in Haverford. At that point, they'd moved out of Center City. And he and his younger brother basically set up shop and decided they were going to just design ships. And this one in particular was this was his dream that was fleshed out on the page in approximately 1914. And this was his perfect ship, his fastest ship. It was envisaged back then in 1914 to be 1,000-foot long, have 1,000 crew, 1,000 passengers, and all of these statistics were completely unheard of at the time. That it was like, what? It was just beyond the pale of existing ship capabilities. But this was an obsession that originated again back in 1914, and as you'll see, it prevailed for decades. But rather than, and I won't go into all the detail here, I can in the Q&A as to what happened with this initial design, but he, suffice it to say that World War I happened, and once the US joined the war, my grandfather was summoned to the Shipping Control Board and a control committee of the US Army, and was fully focused on the war effort. After the war, well, during the war effort, one casualty was a German liner, the Vaterland, that was requisitioned by the U.S. once the U.S. did enter the war, and in Hoboken. And after the war, this was the first big project that my grandfather was responsible for. Converting the Vaterland into what became the SS Leviathan, and it was an incredibly challenging undertaking, and its maiden voyage set forth in 1923. It was against all odds. They did this remarkable conversion, Herculean effort, and at its maiden voyage, there's a quote of my grandfather's that I would like to share because I find it very kind of timeless, shall we say. So, as the Leviathan set forth on its maiden voyage after being converted, he said, "I am not crowing, but the British will have their hardest proposition now in their liners on the North Atlantic, and I think we will give them a trimming. The Americans can know less and do more than any other people." So after the Leviathan, we have the next ship that my grandfather was responsible for designing, and this was from plans. The Leviathan was originally, it was a conversion. This was my grandfather's ship through and through, and it had a very dramatic debut in that it was smashed on its sea trial by a freighter amidships, and in a kind of crisis that was very similar to what felled the Titanic. And so it basically gave this real world experience of this ship, water gushing in, compartments breached, etc., but remaining to stay afloat. And my grandfather wrote about this, and it was almost bizarre, where he read, "Oh yeah, all the other crew members were racing out of the engine room, water's flooding in. I went the other direction because I knew those watertight doors were going to work." And so he, very, very dramatic event that basically redeemed the obsession with ship safety that he spent his whole life fine-tuning. So just a quick personal diversion here. The same year that the Malolo was smashed on her sea trials, my William Francis Gibbs married my grandmother, Vera Cravath, and here they are looking very stylish. And then Subsequently, they had 2 children, and here my father, as you can see, William Francis Gibbs, not looking particularly comfortable with a young child. I think he'd probably prefer to be out on the ships or at a drawing board. And then again, that's my father on the right, he was more of a tug aficionado. But anyway, I digress. So back to World War II. Well, actually not back to World War II, entering into World War II. This is when William Francis Gibbs and Gibbs and Cox, the firm, just hit its stride, and ultimately, as was mentioned in the intro, designed over 63% actually of the ocean-going merchant ships during World War II, almost 6,000 ships in total. The staff of Gibbs and Cox ballooned to 3,000, and here he is profiled on the cover of Time magazine, and he was described by the author of the article as long and stringy. He contrives to look more like an undertaker than a real one. So again, very focused on ships. Here's his compensation for 1944 from the Treasurer of the United States for his efforts, and it totaled 19 cents, which, as you can see, the check was never cashed. So after World War II, we had the phenomenon of our troops needing to come home. And so the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth ferried huge numbers of them. One of the Queen Mary's voyages packed in almost 16,000 troops and 943 crew as U.S. forces were returning from the front lines in Europe and Asia. And so this gave an important opening to the SS United States, because the case was made that after World War II, it would be a fabulous idea for the U.S., for our nation, to have its own awesome superliner that could serve a dual purpose, both ferry troops, a convertible troop ship, so rush a full division of troops to the front lines of battle, but in the meantime, during times of peace, represent the nation as a spectacular ocean liner and passenger liner. And so again, I will abbreviate all of the travails in terms of getting the governmental approvals, the agencies. It was a whole effort to kind of get all the sign-offs, secure the funding, et cetera. Pitched battles for quite some time, but finally it was a go. And the contract to build what was not yet then called the SS United States was granted in 1949, the same year that the USSR tested an atomic bomb. And again, the ship was really designed and supported it in this Cold War context. And so it was, the keel was laid in Newport News, Virginia. And it was, an extraordinary undertaking that this ship was built in kind of miraculous speed. Components from all 48 states were utilized in her construction. She was the safest ship ever built. The mania against fire, but also safety and subdivision was extraordinary. There were 229 individual fire stations, and importantly, there was also a 500,000 square feet of a modern product called marinite, which was used for interior partition walls. And this, of course, was heavily laden with asbestos. So again, back then, this was seen as, a fabulous modern contribution to ensuring the ship's longevity and fire safety. And of course, history advanced, and that proved problematic. So again, these pictures of these propellers, this photograph would never have been shown during her, this would, in the papers back in 1951, 1952, when the ship was emerging, because again, everything about this ship was top secret. The 4 and 5 blade propeller configurations, the shape of her hull, And again, another quote from my grandfather that gets to this point. He said during this time, "The trouble with Americans is that they tell everything they know. There's one man who would like very much to learn more about this ship, and that's Uncle Joe Stalin, and I'm not going to oblige him." He reportedly even sent telegrams to shipyard officials at midnight to their homes with basically dire, warnings that if they told anything, shared any detail about the ship that was emerging in the shipyard, there would be hell to pay. So again, just incredible obsession with secrecy, safety, and in addition, this, you may be wondering what exactly this is. In addition to, I thought I had done that, excuse me. I wanted to go back to, apologies for this. Let's see if we can get that strange photo back. Okay, there we go. So in addition to the safety features, the ship also was packed with all of these modern features, the first ship to have use microwave ovens, the dimmer switch. And here we see this lovely lady on a boat that is comprised of Honeywell thermostat controls, because the ship was each stateroom had individual controls, which is again just the height of modernity and technological advance at the time. And so here she is launched in 1951. Lots of fanfare, super hot day. People apparently passed out from the heat. And it should be noted that she was launched. This is an unusual launch. It wasn't like back in the St. Louis, the launch where it's sort of spectacular splash into the Delaware River. Instead, she was built in a graving dock. And so the day before the official launch, the water was filled halfway. And then the day of the launch, here you can see her gingerly ease out into the river. And this, of course, was also to ensure that some of the propellers that you saw previously and her hull form were not viewed. This was the first ship launch actually to be featured on television. And so this was another convenient secrecy strategy. And so here she is on her speed trials, where she just, smashed all known speed records for ocean liners. She went 38.23 knots using 241,785 shaft horsepower, which is just unbelievable, unprecedented. And then she makes her delivery cruise to New York City. And here is a shot of her triumphal departure on her maiden voyage. She left on July 3rd, 1952. And it was, as you can see, quite a scene. There was just an incredible amount of excitement about this departure of this America's flagship, this new superliner. This was back when ocean liners were extraordinarily important national patriotic symbols, the embodiment of the technology and the artistry of the day, sort of like the space shuttle. I mean, this is, of course, no longer the case, but this was just such a big deal. And my grandfather was on board. Here he is shown with the chief engineer. He would actually only make this crossing. He would only take the ship on the maiden voyage. He would never go aboard her again, but instead would be obsessively tracking her from his office in New York, calling the ship every day when she was at sea, having his driver take him out to the shore parkway so that he could be sitting in his car, watching the ship come back into New York after a European journey. He was incredibly, this was a dream come true for my grandfather. And here the ship, this shows the reception the ship received in the UK on her maiden voyage as she arrived. And I love this quote from the Punch magazine. "After all the loud and fantastic claims made in advance, about the SS United States, it comes as something as a disappointment to find them all true. And here she is, gliding back home, received a hugely, just a euphoric reception in New York. The news release from the New York Mayor's reception committee, it promised that she would receive the most colorful and elaborate harbor demonstration in the history of the city of New York. Ticker tape parade, an extraordinary, lots of fanfare. And again, just smashed the transatlantic speed record. It has not yet been broken. She broke it in both directions. There have been some claimants and some vessels have bested her record on the eastbound leg of the crossing, catamarans and hydrofoil vessels, but nothing approaching a 1,000-foot long ocean liner. And on the westbound crossing, the harder crossing, it has never been broken. And it's fairly sure that it never will. And again, just a comparison of the Titanic and the SS United States. The SS United States could go faster than the Titanic could in, the SS United States could go faster in reverse than the Titanic could go forward. And here, my grandfather, as I've been underscoring, was besotted with his ship, and a reporter inquired, was he even more fond of his ship than his wife? And you can see the response. He assured them that yes, the ship was his love. But I have to say, my grandmother made peace with this, and while my grandfather only took the SS United States on the maiden voyage, my grandmother was a frequent traveler and wrote in her journal that coming aboard the SS United States was like coming home. And so during the service career, again, I'll just show some of the, she was a star. Here she is on the cover of the New Yorker, or a symbol of her. This is the week of her maiden voyage. She's described as fastest, toughest, and most beautiful by Newsweek magazine. Here is a somewhat more more challenging depiction. This was a kind of harrowing depiction of the SS United States in the middle of Times Square. Fortunately, that was fictional. And again, took, as we've seen from the comments in the chat, had this extraordinary service career of taking people back and forth across the Atlantic, immigrants, students, dignitaries, tycoons, artists, just had an extraordinary service career and never had a significant mishap. And here are just a few of the celebrities that traveled aboard her. 4 US presidents. One of my personal favorites is Salvador Dali with his pet ocelot. Here we also have Duke Ellington entertaining with Ethel Merman. And what's interesting about this shot, not only is just it captures the wonderful the music on board, but it shows that there was a mahogany piano. It was one of a number of mahogany pianos that were aboard the vessel, and they were only permitted aboard the vessel after a very challenging dispute with the Steinway Company, because my grandfather adamantly wanted custom pianos, custom made in aluminum, and because of the threat of fire with all these wooden pianos. And so it was only after a mahogany piano was doused with gasoline and ignited that, and it proved the flames kind of sputtered out, and it was not a conflagration, that these mahogany pianos were permitted on board. So in addition to the transatlantic crossings, there toward the end of her service career, there was also some cruising introduced, as you can see by these brochures, where her swimming pool was actually in the lower deck because of all these north crossings in the winter of the North Atlantic. That was where it made sense. But for her cruises, they did kind of a makeshift pool on an upper outer deck. And so this was, as the economics of cruising were becoming more challenging with the advent of air travel, et cetera, cruising was a way to diversify revenue. However, there was one cruise that was scheduled to depart on January 1970. That would have been the first time that she had ever traveled through the Panama Canal. But alas, that cruise never happened because she was pulled from service in November of 1969. And my grandfather had passed away 2 years earlier in 1967. He's buried in sort of improbably in Princeton, New Jersey, a landlocked town. And so he did not live to, he didn't live to see his beloved ship's demise. But and I won't get into the 42 years between 1969 and 2011, but it quite a saga. I guess you could say the ship with 9 lives, a number of initially held by the government because of the security features and concerns, eventually a number of different owners during that 42-year period attempted to bring her back to sea. Different visions were advanced, a hospital ship, floating condos. As part of the plans of one of these owners, a huge auction was held in by Guernsey's auction house, in which all of her interior fittings, and from towels to art to dishes to deck rails were auctioned off again as an attempt to raise money for the ship's refurbishment at that time. But and then a subsequent owner had a fairly substantial with dreams of bringing the ship back to service. But there was a significant challenge, as I noted earlier, the mania for fire safety that was seen as such a fabulous idea back when she was built, using all of this marinite asbestos-laden particle board, was now obviously regulated as an environmental hazard and needed to come off. And so here we have a scene of the ship being towed first to Turkey, where the asbestos removal was going to occur. There was an outcry in Turkey, including by Greenpeace, basically labeling the ship of death because of all of this asbestos on board. Ultimately, the ship was taken to Sevastopol, Ukraine, a former Soviet naval base. And that is where the massive quantity of asbestos was removed back in 1993. And so she subsequently came back to the United States, cleansed of her asbestos, as well as a number of other things, including her lifeboats. And she ended up in Philadelphia. As I said, this is it's a Philadelphia story, really kind of conceived here, and now here she sits. And so here just shows as she made her arrival in 1996, she sort of paused under the Walt Whitman Bridge as folks were trying to determine if she could make it under it, which she did with inches to spare. There's a better picture of that. And then flash forward, after yet another owner was hoping to refurbish her, the SS United States Conservancy, with the support from a fabulous Philadelphia-based philanthropist, Jerry Lenfest, who, an extraordinary human being who unfortunately is no longer with us, but understood the historic significance of this ship and provided the Conservancy with a significant grant to enable us to purchase the ship and basically saving the ship from certain scrapping. And so again, just a few words about the Conservancy. We have owned the ship since 2011, as you've seen, and we are determined to save this ship and honor her historical significance. And in the course of the last decade, have expanded. We have members in all 50 states, 40 nations. We have raised significant funding to keep the vessel afloat. Have expanded. We have over 38,000 Facebook fans, and have just been been working to give this ship a future. And if anyone of you are no longer aren't yet involved in our effort or would like to learn more, by all means, encourage you to visit our website. Just Google SS United States Conservancy or ssusc.org, and there's just a trove of information both about the ship and about our efforts. And again, just to give a few images of our efforts over the past decade of this is Jim Poland, another major contributor who has been extraordinarily generous. And also just we love kind of connecting people to people who have had experiences with the ship, whether as passengers or crew, finding opportunities to bring them together, sharing memories and recording the stories. And they are just unbelievable stories of working and traveling aboard the Flagship. And here, again, just representing in New York some of our supporters, and still holding a really special place in the imagination of kids, and also have been working very hard to keep this story alive. The ship has been covered in media outlets all over the place, as you can see, from Russia to national news. Pretty much all of the major outlets have told her story at various points. We're currently working with the Discovery Science Channel on a mini documentary that is going to air in November, and this is just a very important part of our mission, and to tell the story of this ship and in various formats. In addition, we do not yet have a permanent exhibition space that's planned for the vessel itself, but we've done several interim temporary exhibitions in various venues, including in New York City and back in 2014 at the Independent Seaport Museum, and most recently at the Norman Rockwell Museum. David Macaulay, a fabulous author and illustrator's most recent book, explored the SS United States and his own journey as a young Brit boy coming to the United States on this ship, and wrote a very fabulous book about that. We also have been mounting digital exhibitions. Our penultimate one was on advertising the United States. So fascinating to see how the ship was both used in advertisements for a variety of products, as well as how United States lines advertised their product, i.e. the SS United States. And it's sort of fascinating to see how initially the ship's speed was the big selling point, and blast over to Europe in only 4 days. This is faster than the other ships. But then, of course, as the ship was competing with airline travel, it was like, join the unrushables, have a leisurely, luxurious, pleasant, slow trip across. So just really fascinating to see how advertising changed as in the 50s to the 60s, both stylistically and in terms of key messaging. And then our current exhibition that is available on our website now really explores some of the women who were involved in the art, design, and engineering of the SS United States. And there were a number of them. The interior design team was all women, unusual for the time, and a number of the prominent artists that contributed works of art to the ship's public rooms were women. And here's an example of one by Hildreth Mier, the depicts the Mississippi River, and is a stunning piece. Although I have to say that, notwithstanding the roles of the woman artists, and also including a Gibson Cox engineer responsible for the unique propeller design of the SS United States, none of them were allowed aboard the ship during the sea trials or the delivery cruise, because that was deemed bad luck to have women aboard a ship during those kind of early voyages. And so we've done these interim, both digital and interim exhibitions, but all the while, that we've also been working valiantly to to identify partners to help redevelop the SS United States itself. In other words, our exhibitions and our massive curatorial collection certainly is a huge priority of the organization, but we have this ship. We have the ship sitting in Philadelphia that, despite its faded paint and sort of beleaguered external appearance, is still, because she was so overbuilt to begin with because of the naval specifications and just extraordinary craftsmanship and no expense, just was really everything that went into making her such an indestructible ship. She is still in fantastic structural condition. And so we were thrilled back in, it's been just about 3 years ago now, the Conservancy entered into a partnership with a prominent commercial real estate firm in New York City, RXR Realty, which a owner, investor, operator, developer that currently manages 84 commercial properties in New York. Well, not just in New York, but centered in New York, of $22.4 billion, 30.3 million square feet. And they, like us, just see this amazing development potential of the ship as a mixed use. There's 500,000 square feet of or more, space aboard this vessel that can be purposed in a variety of ways. And there's some exciting examples that exist in the world, from the Queen Mary out in Long Beach to the Rotterdam in the Netherlands, the Queen Elizabeth in Dubai, and so a feasibility process has been ongoing since our initial partnership with RXR, and some top flight architects, engineering teams, have continued to explore various configurations for how this ship could be brought back as a dynamic, unique, unbelievable, restoration and dynamic museum, innovation center, and of course, commercial property. So these plans, of course, as we all know, and this is just a very initial schematic of kind of what the ship could look like. Very early days that this particular location is not envisaged ultimately as where the ship will be. But again, just to begin getting the imagination going about how this ship could be resurrected. And of course, as part of this resurrection and restoration, the Conservancy is planning an incredible shipboard museum and innovation center. And again, these are just very early conceptual renderings of what that might look like. Possibly we would utilize one of the funnels to have sort of a soaring interior space. But just tremendous opportunities to tell the story, not just of this ship, the SS United States, but the broader story of Americans' maritime history, the ocean liner era, and a story of innovation and mid-century modern design. And the ship is an embodiment of something uniquely American, and so we've begun planning what some of those stories will look like and how to share them, and it's been a thrilling effort. And so but of course, the pandemic, which we all, needless to say, has taken the wind out of the sails of most things. There was a bit of treading water, as we were all enduring this unprecedented public health crisis. So while, nonetheless, during that time, we started with getting the propeller to on display in New York, working closely with New York State Parks, and the propeller is now proud. One of the ship's propellers is now proudly on display at Pier 76 in New York. And we have been celebrating this 70th anniversary of the SS United States Maiden Voyage, and which has been fabulous. We have a whole series of interviews with people who were on board that spectacular voyage that basically I think nobody slept at all for 3.5 days. And And so that's been just a wonderful celebration that this ship is still with us. And again, continuing to, during this post-COVID moment, drawing attention to the ship and her potential, including incredibly moving story that we publicized or just not that long ago, of a fabulous guy, New Jersey police officer, Antonio, who had a horrific case of COVID when it was one of the first to succumb back in the early days of the pandemic, and nearly died. And during his laborious, arduous recovery, the last part of which occurred in South Philadelphia, saw the ship out of his window and on his trips back and forth to rehab, and just drew incredible strength from this symbol of this ship depicting hope and not giving up. And it really helped give him the energy to not give up. And he's back in full health. And we were so honored to accompany him on board the ship not too long ago. And so again, kind of wrapping up, the SS United States it's not just the steel and aluminum that we see on the Delaware River. The ship is an extraordinary symbol that means so much to so many. This is one of my personal favorites, needless to say. And so it's a dream that we are determined to continue to infuse. And the Conservancy, continues to receive messages like this, where here's a young Henrik, 6-year-old Henrik, is sharing with us just how even, he's seen this on a computer screen, presumably, but it captures something deep within him. It's a ship of dreams. And so we are, again, so determined to keep her afloat and give her an amazing future. And here's where, not the dream, but certainly a dream started. My grandfather, as a boy, not too much older than Henrik, who we just saw his letter, just had developed a dream of a ship and saw it come true. And so we're, yes, very determined to keep this, to give this ship an extraordinary future, and to celebrate the fact that in this profoundly challenging moment that we are in a country where partisan divisions have become more and more intense and difficult, here is a red, white, and blue American symbol that has the ability to bring us together in an incredibly powerful way. And so it's been an honor to do what I can to help fulfill this dream, and again, with the help of so many others from all over the world who are determined to see this Philly girl make, kind of keep going and incarnating into her next chapter. So I think with that, I'm happy to take questions. I initially was tracking the chat, but then I lost track. So yes, just thank you all for coming, and would love to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Susan. This has been fantastic and fascinating, and yet there's a lot of things in the chat. First, I think it's really nice. We have Elizabeth Rosenmeyer on the talk, whose husband purchased the ship in 1992. He is one of the previous owners. She said he had sailed to America on it and then became a U.S. citizen, and was so proud of his citizenship that he wanted to see that ship that brought him here restored. And she always also asks, she's curious why do you think that none of the cruise lines or owners that attempted to revive the ship over the last 40 years succeeded in getting it back into business as a cruise ship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's so fabulous. I'm so excited to learn that she is with us. I'd love to follow up, after, get maybe contact information and hear more about But yes, the Conservancy entered into an option agreement in 2016 with Crystal Cruises and took a very close look at the prospects of bringing the ship back into seagoing service. And essentially, the main challenge that we ended up confronting, or Crystal Cruises ended up confronting, is even though the ship was just exceeded all safety standards at the time that the ship was designed and built, it was far beyond anything else. Time marches on, and now the SOLAS requirements, which stands for safety of life at sea, I guess, to conform to current regulations was a cost prohibitive undertaking. Basically, there would have to be massive changes performed to ensure the ship complied with current regulations. And so that is I would say has been the biggest challenge to a seagoing service scenario, which is why the Conservancy is now focused exclusively on a stationary, permanently. We would love to see this ship permanently docked. And we're excited about how we can, even though the ship physically is not busting a move and crossing the Atlantic or going around the world, that through our museum and through immersive experiences that we can create to nonetheless provide the experience of virtually what would it have been like to be on this ship in a hurricane in the North Atlantic with 90-foot waves. And although that may be an immersive experience that may not be too popular as people make it, but yeah, that really was the primary factor.
Thank you. So Mark said his understanding was that Jerry Lenfest's father designed the watertight doors, and is that correct?
Yes, that is our understanding. Not all of them. There were a number of different fabricators and designers, but yes, that he was a marine, naval architect, marine engineer, and yes, had a role in designing some of the watertight door components, and that was very moving for Jerry, and so yes, that is true.
And what did Jerry? So David is wondering what Jerry Lenfest hoped to do when he brought with the ship when he brought it to Philadelphia, and if he was
actually the ship wasn't brought to Philadelphia by Jerry Lenfest. So the ship was brought to Philadelphia by a previous owner. The ship has been in Philadelphia at this point 26 years, and so Jerry didn't bring the ship to Philadelphia, but he became very concerned when a subsequent owner, Norwegian Cruise Line, which had purchased the ship with hopes of returning it to service as a U.S. flagged ship as part of its NCL America fleet back, and this is again before, back in 2003, I believe. But then their plans did not materialize, in part because of the global economic crisis that proved to be incredibly challenging for the economy in general, but the cruise industry in particular. And so the ship was going to be scrapped. And that's it at that point. So this is 2010. At that point is when Jerry became very concerned that we must not let this American icon be destroyed. And so, yes, he became a huge champion, and yeah, just was we were very honored to partner with him on the project.
Wonderful. And Jamie asked an interesting question. Jamie wonders what were the features of the USS that made the ship readily convertible to a troop ship?
Yeah, they're very detailed plans. It's pretty fascinating. I mean, part of it was just the way the ship was, the core design of the SS United States, just the bulkheads, it was designed with that in mind. So, which of course, even to the point of the lack of wood and as I said, the safety, the subdivision, 2 duplicate engine rooms, the double hull, the ship itself was the equivalent of a military vessel in that sense, with all those extra features. But then if the ship was never converted to a troop ship use. In other words, there was a little bit of a false alarm at one point, but but never was deployed. But the plans are pretty fascinating, detailed plans of where the gun emplacements would be, the swimming pool would be covered up, some interior walls would be taken down, and there'd be a bunch of new barber shops put in, and just a fascinating litany of what the ship would undergo to become a troop ship. So yeah, it was a kind of an elaborate process, but that could be performed very quickly because, of course, that would have been a requirement.
Do you know what the Valerie was wondering if you know what the cost of the ticket for the maiden voyage would have been?
You know what? I don't. I don't know that off the top of my head, but it's certainly, I'm happy to follow up and supply that after. Yeah, but needless to say, it would be, yeah, it was inflation is real. it was, but of course it was a 3 class. So there's first class, cabin class, and tourist class, and so. Even though, there's a lot of, and I like to talk about how, the champagne and the caviar and the, shark fin soup that the first class passengers enjoyed for a price. There are also, a lot of, steerage would be the more colloquial way to say it, that one could cross the Atlantic aboard the SS United States for a more modest ticket price as well.
Claire wonders if you've been able in your work to recover some of the original fittings and interior decorations.
Yes, we have, and that's been incredibly exciting for us. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, there was this enormous auction in 1984 in which virtually all of the ship's interior fittings and artifacts and art were sold. But what that means is that they're out there, that there are a variety of owners, some of whom have been eager to connect with us and to, kind of return them in a sense to the ship from whence they came. And so, and we've also been acquiring items, some of the just iconic artistic installations are now in our collection, as well as examples of the furniture. The ship's interior fittings are just the epitome of mid-century modern, and so we're just, and as well as some of the ephemera, the video footage, the photography, letters, slides, and files from the ship in terms of the records and the logs, and so we have a substantial collection of items from the ship, and we are continuing to grow that collection.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. So we've had a few questions about wondering if there are either physical or virtual tours of the ship.
Yeah, we're actually in the process of developing a more kind of more comprehensive virtual tour of the ship. Unfortunately, because the SS United States is kind of undeveloped and unremediated, there are some hazards on board. So we are restricted. Vessel access is highly restricted. We're only able to provide access to small groups, but we are able to offer that opportunity to some levels of our contributors, and so our website provides additional information about that opportunity. But yes, we're very eager for the day when we can, have this restoration advances and the doors can be flung open, and we can share this experience with many more people.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. We've had lots of great questions, but this one is from Darielle, wondering if you have a public archive or a way for people to share their photos or experiences of their own travels on the ship.
Yes, we would love to hear from anyone with memories, photos, testimonials. We have various initiatives. We have an oral history series where we have been recording the reflections of people with firsthand experiences with the ship. We have, of course, an extensive digital archive, and that we're in the process of making more publicly available. It's and yes, I mean, that is a crucial component of our curatorial mission is to both gather and then subsequently share these memories, these stories, and these items. So yes, if anyone is interested in sharing some of their stories or imagery with us, but we would love, our curatorial team would absolutely love to hear from any of you, and you can just email info@ssusc.org or Google, there's contact information on our website, and some of these resources are available on our website. We also love people to follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, and we're very committed to being good custodians of these memories that and items that people are sharing, but also to disseminate them, because it's we see that as absolutely part of our mission, and we're so honored that people are continuing to share with us.
Thank you, Susan. And the website, Mark just put it up, www.ssusc.org. I encourage you, if you did get your question answered, to go to that website, and I suspect you can find answers to a lot of your questions. Susan, thank you for a fabulous talk, an opportunity for so many of our friends today to relive their own memories of traveling, or the stories that they heard from their friends or family who traveled on the SS United States. This has been very enjoyable. Thank you so much. For all of our friends here, I hope you will join us on Sunday at 3 p.m. in Washington Square for our second annual Sunday in the Square, with a wonderful, wonderful lineup of music, poetry reading from Philadelphia's Poet Laureate, music by a Met debuted opera mezzo, play on Philly pop band, and Pershing Zone from the U.S. Army. So please join us. And next Sunday, I think there are still a few tickets left if you want to join our group to go see Opera Philadelphia's production of Othello. We have several tours coming up of various interesting, including the Fairmount Waterworks. And the class that we are, as part of our Libraries and Liberty seminar series, the class with the Rosenbach is starting in just a few weeks. There may still be places available in that. If you want to learn more, go to philathenaeum.org and click on events, and you will see all of the events coming up for the next few months. Hope you will all join us. Thank you, Susan, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you all on Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful. So yeah, I guess you could scroll through if you want to see.
Yeah, I was just,